I noticed that at one time you went to school to become a pastor. Am I right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And what made you go to school to become a pastor?
Well, I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps,
Yeah, your father was
be a
a pastor,
pastor.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Evangelical pastor. So that was my path that eventually forced me to sort of question if I really believed in that kind of version of God or not.
And so you went to school to be a pastor because you wanted to be like your father, who was a pastor. And at that
Yeah.
time, it wasn't because God called you to do that, whatever word you want to use. God didn't call you to be a pastor. It's just that you admired your father and you wanted to be what he was.
Well, from the time I was really young, I would have people giving me all these prophetic words, which is
Yeah,
very, very common in
sure is.
evangelical
Yeah.
Christianity. And, you're going to be a pastor, you're going to go to the nations, you're going to heal the world and all this stuff, bring the gospel. So it sort of was an ingrained belief from childhood that I was conditioned to believe that I'm supposed to be a pastor. But I was always a very devout Christian in the sense that I genuinely loved God and Christ with all my heart, always wanted to be like Christ and do the right thing. And so there was a natural desire to share that love of God with the world. And for me, it was through worship, through music, growing up leading worship. That's kind of how I started my ministry, was as a worship leader, and planned to someday become like a senior pastor like my dad, but didn't end up making it that far.
And do you regret going to theological college to learn about God? Do you regret that now?
Oh, not in the slightest. No.
And why not? Did it help you?
Yeah, I think when you look back at your journey, it's just the way that hindsight works. You look at every step you took that brought you to the place you are now, and you go, wow, if I hadn't had made that step, I wouldn't be able to be here today. It's sort of like that for me. It was a very valuable experience going to ORU and being in that environment. That was where my awakening out of religion really began, because that school in particular was also very focused on the hardline stuff of who's going to hell and the rapture's coming and all this stuff. And it started to bump up against me in a way that I said, man, do I really believe this stuff? Because it just sounds crazy to me the more these people say it. And eventually it caused me to kind of unravel the whole belief system.
Amazing. And so are you still a pastor?
Some people call me a pastor, ironically, on YouTube, but yeah, if a pastor is a shepherd, then I would certainly see myself over the students in my programs. I very much try to have a shepherding kind of relationship with everyone.
And so do you teach people?
Uh-huh.
And why do you teach them?
That's a good question. I could give many different answers, but the most authentic answer that comes from within me is just that this is the position life put me in. I think when we have a deep passion for something, I always like to say your passion is what qualifies you, in the sense of, how do I know I'm supposed to do this? How do I know I'm supposed to have a radio show or be a teacher or this or that? Well, are you passionate about it? Does it excite you to get out of bed every day to do that thing? Then that's kind of how you know that that's what the universe has called you to do. And for me, from 27 years old, it's just always been a passion in my heart to share eternal truths with the world.
Do you think if you did not teach people about the truth or spirituality, that would be better for them if you didn't teach them?
I guess I can't say.
And why not?
Well, we don't know what life is doing in any given moment. We just have to be in the flow of life.
Oh, okay.
And it seems as if the flow of life has brought me to this place where I teach. Would people be better off if I didn't teach? Maybe in a parallel universe. I don't know.
Did you, when you were in theological school, college, did you ever read where God said, "Let no man teach you"?
Yeah.
And he said the Holy Spirit will teach us all things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you believe that to be true?
I do, in a sense. Yeah, I think what that verse is getting at is going back to the outsourcing of your power of like, let me just listen to what this person is saying and believe it all at face value, rather than hearing what someone has to say, taking it inwards and giving it to the Holy Spirit and seeing if it intuitively resonates. And I think that's also what Jesus meant when he said, he who has an ear to hear, let him listen. Meaning if you have the level of awareness to understand what I'm really saying, the deeper level of this teaching, then you're going to understand it. If you don't have that awareness, then it's not going to make any sense to you. So I think that that's kind of what that verse is pointing out of, everyone's teaching, many people teach, but ultimately you have to take the truth within and find it within yourself.
What I've noticed that if people are taught, they intellectually learn it, but they don't know the truth, right?
Right.
And are you concerned, because we do have a teacher within, are you concerned that teaching them that they're just picking it up intellectually, but they don't know the truth?
Am I concerned with it in the sense that I worry about it? Not at all.
And why not?
Because I'm not in control of that.
Oh, okay.
That's
well, you're right. I know you're not in control of that. Because no matter what you do, the intellect going to kick in because people identify with the intellect. And
right.
Some people are just going to hold on to it anyway.
Right. You got it.
What was it like growing up with a pastor as a father?
Oh man, I could give a long-winded answer for this one probably. But the short answer is that for me, it was absolutely wonderful. I was very, very blessed that I grew up in a pastor's household that wasn't as typical as you may usually hear, in that I wasn't forced into rigid behavior control and extremely strict rules for living and curfews and stuff. My dad grew up like that in his Nazarene household. His parents were Nazarene pastors. I mean, he had to have his hair slicked back and wear a certain, shirt every day. And it was extremely strict. And he had a very challenging childhood because of that. So he kind of made a deal with himself that when I become a pastor one day, I'm never doing this to my kids. I'm going to give them the freedom to be who they are and stuff. And so while they instilled, godly values in us and a deep love for God, they didn't try to force us to behave a certain way necessarily outside of just standard good parenting.
All right.
And so I was very free in the way that I grew up as a Christian and didn't feel the same pressure that I think most pastors' kids feel.
Good, man. And who were the first person to tell you about God, to take you to church or tell you about God? Was it your father or your mother?
Both.
But they told you at the same time?
Yeah, then they never went to church without each other.
And so they both talked to you about God at the same time?
I don't know. I honestly don't remember, what the first conversation we had about God was, but I do remember many instances of asking them questions about God and having them both kind of have a dialogue with me.
Nice. Amazing.